Oh, see, I'm not used to this. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Executive. My name is Councillor Tony Fairclough, Deputy Leader of the Council, and in the absence of Councillor Paul Follows, Chair of the Executive this evening. This meeting has been held in the Council Chamber at the Berries in Godalming and is being webcast live. This evening's agenda was published on the 29th of July and a supplement was published on Thursday to issue the member question received, which will be responded to this evening under agenda item 5. So item 1, Ben, are there any apologies?
Thank you. You have apologies this evening from Councillors Follows and Williams.
Thank you, Ben. Item 2, can we all agree that the minutes of the previous meeting on the 9th of July, as published on the website, can we agree those? Thank you. Item 3, do we have any declarations of interest? None received. Ben, any questions from the public?
There were none.
However, I do believe we have a question from a member. Councillor Spence, if you would like to ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. Yes, at the executive meeting on May the 7th, I inquired about the future status of the Edge Sports Hall. And in her response, the portfolio holder for Community Services, Leisure and EDI stated, and I quote from the minutes, Waverley representatives are in regular contact with Surrey officers and a meeting is scheduled next week to look at the future options beyond the year arrangement. In accordance with the leader's decision after 6 months, a review will be carried out, which is July, looking at the performance and giving options for a way forward of a more permanent nature. Please could the portfolio holder provide an update on the July review and the future options now being considered? Thank you.
Councillor Mirrlees, I believe you have a response.
Thank you, Leader or Deputy Leader. Councillor Spence, thank you for nudging. Regular meetings have been held between Waverley and Surrey County Council officers to agree the current short-term lease and deal with any pressing matters. Surrey County Council have recently commissioned SLC to do an options appraisal on the future arrangements, and this is due to report back in September and will then be reported to each council to inform the decision on future management arrangements for the Edge. I hope that's sufficient for you, but that's where we are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mirrlees. On to updates. I don't believe we're, Ben, are we allowed to ask supplementaries? I didn't believe we were.
No, not in executive, no.
With apologies, Councillor Spence. So on to leads and portfolio updates. With respect to the petrol pollution incident in Bramley, Councillors Townsend, Follows and myself attended a meeting of the Bramley Community Recovery Group this morning, the Business Recovery Group, and I must admit I was highly impressed with the attitude that ASDA are taking towards this issue. They seem incredibly proactive and incredibly willing to listen and help the community, and I trust that the other meeting groups are similarly respected there, because I thought ASDA were doing a very good job. So hope it's not going to go away quickly, but ASDA and the community seem to be working together, so that is good. I'll go round in counterclockwise, I guess. Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Nothing to add to this next time, I'm sure.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Nothing to report, Deputy Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Merriweather, you've got stuff later, so...
I have. I'll save it till then. Thanks.
Please don't let me down, Councillor Townsend. I'm sure you have plenty to talk about from a planning perspective.
I have got a little update, and just to say thank you as well to officers who chaired the meeting, the Business Recovery Group this morning, and for all of their work in the overall coordination of the recovery of the situation in Bramley. And just to confirm as well, we will be publishing details of the ASDA offer on our website as well, and the newly formed Bramley Business Network will also be helping us to publicise that to other businesses in the local community. And also thank you to the Golf Club for continuing to host those meetings and to provide refreshments as well. That's very much appreciated. With regards to planning, members will be aware that the new government has launched its consultation on wide-ranging changes to the planning system and published proposed revisions to the National Planning Policy Framework. These proposed revisions include the identification of grey belt, land within the green belt to be brought forward, as well as broadening the definition of brownfield land and strengthening the expectation that applications on brownfield land will be approved. There is still support from the government for the delivery of development through a local plan, and it's extremely positive that we are already firmly on the pathway to producing a new plan ourselves. A substantial change that members will no doubt have heard about is the way that housing targets will be set under the standard method. Councils will be expected to meet the new figure unless they can demonstrate hard constraints locally and that they have exhausted all other possible options, including the thorough review of the Greenbelt. The new standard method would almost double our housing targets from 710 new homes per year to 1,374, which will be extremely challenging for us to meet. However, just remonstrating against this will hold no weight. We will have to provide robust evidence of our constraints and robust evidence of the number of good quality new homes we are able to accommodate. We will also be highlighting to the government the current approximately 6,000 unbuilt permissions and local plan allocations that really need some government intervention to help unlock, as well as the overdue and much needed significant investment in local infrastructure to serve existing residents as well as new ones. We have until the 24th of September to work through the 106 questions, and this will be also, our answers will also be circulated to all members, and it will be published online as well. And I would encourage as many residents, businesses, community groups, any organisation to also share their views on the proposals with the government as well. So it's important they get a wide range of views on these new, very significant changes. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. I don't think any of us are underestimating the task ahead of us and the planning officers, and it's an incredibly important thing. Excuse me, Councillor Kill.
Sorry, Liz, hi. So the one thing which I saw in there, which I think most people will really, really welcome, and it seems fairly uncontentious, is the rise in planning fees, which can be set locally. I've always thought the way it's run now is an absolute scandal. So that I read in there and I thought, wow, that's a positive thing. And they're already given a figure of doubling the price, and also you can negotiate things. So I think that is one we should all support, I think, yeah.
Thank you, George. Councillor Keel.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councillor Mirrlees.
I'm going to just be introducing something later on, so nothing else. Thanks.
And Councillor Crowe.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Agenda item 7, recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There are none, so we can move straight on to item 8, the budget and medium-term financial plan update, to be presented by Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Chair. So this report's on pages 11 to 26 of your packs, and I think it's a very good report, and the feedback I've had is that it's quite readable. So congratulations to officers. Thanks to officers for that. So I'm just going to pick out some of the main headlines, but I do need to remind colleagues that the references specifically in the report to our medium-term financial plan relate to our general fund, which is everything we do except for our social council housing, which has ring-fenced funding operated within our housing revenue account, which has its own 30-year business plan. So this report also distinguishes between those two where necessary, and also between revenue and capital spending, which are also funded very differently. So paragraphs 6.4 to 6.13 of the report covers the outturn of the 2023-24 financial year, which ended just over 4 months ago on the 31st of March of this year. For the general fund, we expect a net revenue underspend of £643,000, driven mainly by sustained higher interest rates received on our Treasury deposits. While these are welcome, they are temporary and come hand in hand with a higher cost base, which will survive after the interest rates return to target. We also achieved vacancy savings on staff budgets despite immense labour market pressures, and I'm going to return to that shortly. And just over half of the net underspend is related to commitments that have been brought forward into this current year, while the balance is being earmarked to other commitments. And so our usable general fund reserves will remain fairly static. For the housing revenue account, we expect, again, still for last year, a net revenue underspend of just over £1.7 million, which also reflects high interest rates received, but was primarily due to savings in the revenue contribution to capital spend, together also, again, with staff budget savings. For both the general fund and the HRA, we're analysing variances and especially any underperformance on the adverse side of the equation, and will act accordingly insofar as they will continue into this current year. Sections 6.14 to 6.39 of the report turn to this current budget year 24-25 and the medium-term financial plan horizon through to 2027-28. While this section is specific to the general fund, many of the comments, though, do apply to some degree to the HRA business plan. So the report summarises the budget changes that have been approved to date and how they are being funded. And of these, around £235,000 are ongoing or recurring staff costs, which compare to the vacancy staff savings I referred to earlier and reflect our priority to invest in permanent staff, to improve productivity and minimise the needs for expensive temporary agency and interim staff. Otherwise, we do at least continue to benefit from the higher interest rates on our deposits still. But the report also notes that in addition to the usual planning and funding uncertainties which we go through in the run-up to the budget, which are bad enough, we now have a new government that will likely review local government funding, and we have yet to see what will come of that and when. So we expect the timetable for this year's budget setting process leading up to the council in February next year to be at least as tight as usual, and that timeline's covered in the remainder of the report. In that vein, can I also update, please, paragraph 6.38, which states incorrectly that the updated corporate strategy will be taken to full council in September 2024, when in fact the strategy is now expected to go to scrutiny in September and then on to the executive and council in October. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Would anyone like to ask any questions or raise any points? Okay, then none. I would like to pass my thanks on to Richard and Candice and everyone else behind the scenes who's involved in it. It was a very challenging report, and it did read very well indeed, even to those of us whose first language is not finance. So thank you all. Right, in that case, the recommendation, remind me, Councillor Merriweather.
Yeah, it's on page.
Page 11.
So
So-
on to the 12, yeah.
Yeah, the recommendation is that the executive notes the updated MTFP position, which will be used as the starting point for the detailed work now required. 2.2 provides feedback on the proposed MTFP timetable, and 2.3 identify any areas of the budget for further consideration. Can we take them all together? Are we agreed? Thank you. Moving on, or rather staying the same, it's Councillor Merriweather again. Item 9, fees and charges policies.
Thank you, Chair. So this is on pages 27 to 44 of your packs, which I think is fairly self-explanatory, so I'm going to keep this short. Our ability to act commercially is very tightly regulated. Even the decision on whether to make a charge and the amount of that charge for a discretionary public service that we are permitted and willing to provide is equally not always within our control, and the level of some of the charges are set by central government. Now, while this policy doesn't change our current practices, it does formally record them and establishes that consistent benchmark for additional work that we want to do to review and improve a number of fees and charges that recently have only been subject to inflationary increases annually. The policy also provides transparency and a baseline for future continuous improvement in the years ahead, which I commend to the executive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Again, any questions or any points that anyone would like to raise? In that case, let's move on to the recommendation. And the recommendation is that the council approves and adopts the fees and charges policy set out in Appendix 1. I do apologise. The executive, sorry, I do apologise. The executive is asked to resolve to recommend that the council, quite rightly, approve and adopts the fees and charges policy as set out in Appendix 1. Are we agreed? Thank you. So item 10, in the absence of the leader and in the absence of Councillor Williams, is down to me. And it is the Phillips Memorial Park Greenway procurement. With apologies, because this is one far closer to Councillor Williams' heart than my own, and he would know far more about this than me. So rather like Councillor Merriweather last time out, I shall keep this fairly brief. This is part of the Surrey County Council initiative to develop a greenway between Guildford and Godalming. The Waverley project is providing the means to do so, effectively an east to west route. The report aims to seek approval for the procurement via an open tender of a contractor to construct the western part of the Godalming Greenway Getaway. And the recommendation is in front of you. Are there any questions? And I put my hands up right here, right now, and say that Councillor Williams would be far better placed, but I will do my best. Councillor Townsend, you're going to put me on the spot, aren't you?
Not at all, not at all. I was just going to say I'd also like to thank our officers because especially Tom Lancaster, who's been heavily involved in actually creating this Greenway and for pushing this project as well with Surrey County Council. So it's thanks to him that we've got this, I think, on the agenda now, and I very much support this. You know, in order to encourage people to walk and cycle more, we need to provide the infrastructure for them to be able to do it. So this is a long-standing project to link up, obviously, Godalming and Guildford, and you know, I very much welcome this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Would anyone else like to? Oh, Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. I just want to say the decision making around this kind of predated my election. However, I'm supportive of the cycleway going through the park. I think it's a really good idea and it will encourage people to use these more sustainable forms of transport. I trust that, I note that we are sort of are told that the construction will be over winter to minimise disruption to the use of the park. And so I trust that there will be every effort to make sure that children and other people using the park will be kept safe during the construction. Thank you.
I'm sure that they will, and it's a very good point to be raised. Any further questions? Oh, Councillor Merriweather.
Sorry, Chair, it's not a question, but in the interest of balance, my view of this is that yes, we're promoting cycling and walking as part of the climate emergency response, but we're also meeting a demand. That demand for this kind of facility is already there. It doesn't need any promoting from us. We're actually supplying infrastructure that our residents already want, even if it's just to keep fit and stay healthy. So I see it as a much broader facility than just something we're promoting specific for the climate emergency.
Absolutely, it's all part of health and well-being in the community. Councillor Murray.
Hi, thank you, Deputy Leader. Can I just ask, and probably Mark will be able to ask, the plan is to do it in the winter of 24, this winter, so it'll be ready in the summer of 25 for events. And the SIL application is Q3 24-25. Is that, would it go ahead without that SIL funding if the SIL bid was unsuccessful, or is it, what's the, because you've got a plan to start. I'm looking, it says SIL funding will be made for Godalming Town Council to consider Q3 24-25, and the delivery will enable delivery to proceed Q4 24-25. Is that enough time? Sorry.
I can.
Yeah.
Either Councillor Merriweather or indeed.
Well, I think the SIL application is going to Godalming Town Council for neighbourhood SIL rather than to Waverley for strategic SIL. And I'm sorry, Godalming Town Council's SIL arrangements is one of the infinite number of things I don't know a great deal about.
Thank you. Julian.
Thanks. Just to confirm, Councillor, that yes, we will still be able to meet the funding if the SIL application is unsuccessful. So it will still go ahead.
Thank you. If I may, only because obviously this is a subject that comes under the portfolio of Councillor Williams. We have Delma online. I don't know, Delma, whether you wanted to add anything.
Yeah. Yes, I will. I'm just going to add that we already have strategic SIL, so that's what we've secured. So this funding from the Godalming SIL is for the additional £655,000, which is our match funding. In the event that we're unsuccessful with that, we're looking to use the climate reserve. In the short term, hopefully we're looking to get some further funding from Empty Homes if necessary to put that climate reserve back.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? In that case, I shall move to the recommendation. The recommendation being that the executive approves delegation of authority to the Strategic Director of Housing and Environment for the procurement of a contractor via open tender to construct the western section of the Godalming Greenway Gateway through Phillips Memorial Park. Are we agreed? Thank you. Councillor Mirrlees, on to you for item 11, the Swimming Pool Support Fund.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I wish I wouldn't start with, I've tried to stop it, but it keeps happening, so I should know better. Waverley Borough Council has been awarded a grant of 137,000 by Sport England to install solar panels on the roof. Now, the roof is going to need extra work in order to support this. So council approved the use of £450,000 in order for this to go ahead. It is only part of what the things that we are going to do for the leisure centre in order to improve in terms of our energy saving improvements, but this is one of the most important ones. Other works will include the replacement of boilers with a heat pump solution, which is being funded by the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme operated by Salix and will be completed in due course. But for now, we need to get this in place. And so I ask the council to go with the recommendations that are set out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mirries. Councillor Townsend.
Just like to congratulate Councillor Miralles and obviously the officer team for being awarded this grant. We have been far more successful of late of getting grant money, and I know it's extremely hard work to actually secure these grants. So my thanks to the officer team. I think this is great news. It's great news that we are making more inroads into becoming carbon neutral and on our leisure centres. So with the Cranley Leisure Centre, the new Passive House Leisure Centre, and now these on Farnham Leisure Centre with the PV panels and also the improvements to the boilers, it's going to make a huge dent in our carbon footprint, and that's great news for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to rehearse that we are living in an environment, we have been living in an environment where grant funding has become increasingly competitive and increasingly fragmented and very, very difficult to hunt down and secure. We took a conscious decision a few years ago to allocate support and create resource to chase after this money, and it's paying for itself many times over. And it's so many of the stuff that we're doing now that's being grant funded just wouldn't be possible if we didn't have that resource internally. So I think, yeah, congratulations to the officers. It's something that's really, really working very well. Thank you.
Councillor Miralles.
Yes, just to add to that, Paul Smith, who is our main funding officer, has worked brilliantly since he came to work at Waverley Borough Council. He started with us with the museum, and he has just been extraordinarily good at his job, and we are very, very lucky to have him. So just to say thank you to him.
Very much so. I think we're all agreed that this is a process that we'd rather not enter into, but having been forced to enter into it, it's good that we have officers that know how to reach in and get this funding for us. So I'd like to echo Councillor Miralles' statements there. Any further questions? In that case, I shall move to the recommendations. The recommendations being that the executive agree to the council entering into a funding agreement for £137,000 with Sport England, sums of which will be used on the Farnham Leisure Centre. To delegate authority to the Joint Strategic Director, Finance and Resources, in consultation with the Joint Strategic Director, Legal and Governance, to enter into the necessary contractual agreement with Sport England to receive the funding per 2.1 above. Delegated authority to the Joint Strategic Director, Finance and Resources, in consultation with the Joint Strategic Director, Legal and Governance, to procure, appoint and enter into the necessary contractual agreements with a contractor or contractors for the PV and prerequisite roof replacement works at Farnham Leisure Centre, and approve the use of capital budget allocation of £450,000 previously agreed as part of the 24-25 budget for the roof works at Farnham Leisure Centre. Are we agreed? Thank you. moving on to item 12, which is the grounds maintenance service provision. And again, in the absence of both Councillor Williams and Councillor Follows, the leader, I will be presenting this. This is in relation to the maintenance contract currently with Continental for the upkeep of grounds owned by Waverley Borough Council. And as you are aware from the papers and indeed from the discussions that we have had, there were three options considered. The first option was to extend the current contract with Continental Landscapes for a further 5-year period, whereas options 2 and 3 allowed Waverley to evaluate the cost efficiencies of delivering what I shall refer to as an in-house service, whether that in-house service was in collaboration with Guildford Borough Council or whether that in-house service would be provided completely independently by Waverley Borough Council. The two options themselves relate to time and cost. Option 1, the preferred option, or the recommended option, I should say, extends the contract by 1 year at a supplementary cost of £90,000. Option 2 extends the contract by 2 years. And I am reliably informed by the officers concerned that option 1 being the preferred option and is the one that they would very much like the executive to, the recommendation that they would like the executive to endorse. I'm sure there will be questions on this. Thank you, Councillor Crowe.
Well, when I read this, I had one thought, and it's probably based totally on my own ignorance of the process here, but why didn't we do this a year ago? I mean, why are we saying we'll have it from now for a year instead of doing it a year ago? You know, in other words, within the life of the current contract. I mean, maybe there isn't a sensible answer to that. It might be even a stupid question, but it's just what occurred to me when I read it.
My own opinion, Councillor Crowe, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And whilst I cannot promise you I have the exact answer, I would imagine it has something to do with the fact that we are also, of course, looking at our land asset transfer policy, and therefore the decisions are being made in totality. We are at a situation where the officers concerned are recommending a 1-year extension. I'm assuming because they ran out of time on the 5-year contract, but I think it's a perfectly fair question. Thank you. Councillor Merriweather.
Sorry, just to clarify on that, the current contract doesn't actually end until the 31st of October 2024. So even if we had come to this point of agreement, because it has to be a bilateral thing with Continental, even if we come to this point of agreement 6 months, a year ago, it wouldn't have been able to take effect until 1st of November this year anyway.
I think Councillor Crowe's question was, could we have not been reviewing it a year ago? But the point, yeah, I'm sure that we were.
Sorry, I mean, it's not a one-way thing. You know, that there is a dialogue between us and Continental. If Continental, you know, wanted to do whatever we told them to, we could have agreed it 2 years ago. But the point is that it's a commercial discussion, and you know, these things sometimes don't get resolved until later than you'd like. But it's still a contract that isn't actually expired yet.
Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, just to clarify that during that period of time, we have been looking at the in-house solution to see whether or not we could actually deliver this at a better value for residents. Currently, that doesn't seem possible, so that's why this has taken a little time to come through. So it wasn't just a normal contract renewal, it was looking at an alternative provision. As we are doing each time we renew the contracts, we're committed to looking to see whether or not we can provide an in-house provision ourselves, better value for money, perhaps for residents. So that's why this has now come to this point when we are agreeing to extend this for another year. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Townsend. Julian, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that the terms of the contract originally were another 5-year extension, so the contract wasn't due to actually expire, it was due to extend for 5 years. I think what we have been able to do is buy ourselves a 1-year extension rather than a 5-year extension in order to evaluate the options of whether a collaboration with Guildford or in fact indeed in housing us via straight into Waverley is something, as you say, Councillor Townsend, that will make financial sense for us as well as sense from a social value point of view. So I think consultation with the team at both Guildford and Waverley says that 12 months will enable us to mobilise if we need to make that decision. Hence, we'll be coming back quite quickly in October with the results of the work we've done to evaluate whether that then becomes a value for money option, giving us enough time to then mobilise and start a contract from next October if we need to.
Thank you, Julian. Any further questions from? In that case, I shall move to the recommendation, and the recommendation being that the executive is recommended to authorise A, the contract extension for a period of 1 year with a cost of £1,199,261, inclusive of performance incentive payment, subject to contract content, standard CPI uplift application, and an additional 7.5% uplift on the annual contract sum. And B, a supplementary estimate of £90,000 to fund the additional budget required to cover the cost of the 1-year extension. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. I believe that we have reached the end of the meeting. So with that in mind, I'd like to close the meeting by saying thank you all for attending. Please be advised that our next meeting is on the 3rd of September at 7 p.m. and I close the meeting at 7:37 p.m. Thank you. That is tougher than it all makes.